What's going YouTube? We are here for week 4 of the XFL season preview. Exciting last weekend of games, 3 games down to the wire. Really close last second plays, exciting, good matchups. Pretty good slate of games this week. I think some pretty interesting games, not as many high leverage, top teams, but I think there's some interesting games for some teams that you need to look out for. We'll get into all of it. We'll do some predictions, previews, all that fun stuff. Let's first give me 1 second. And we'll just go through the schedule, we'll run through some picks, and then we'll go from there. So this week of games, week 4. We got Houston Roughnecks at Orlando Guardians. Roughnecks obviously went to 3-0 last week against San Antonio. I think won 23-14. Let's see, it's right here actually. 22-13, excuse me. So pretty good win for the Roughnecks, unspectacular. It was a little bit less close than that even. Orlando, just with the 1-point loss to the Arlington Renegades, looked a lot more poised. Paxton Lynch looked a lot better. I thought their defense looked a lot more solid. Granted, Kyle Sloter played, but I thought they looked better. We'll talk about it. I think this game being at home, not that they have a home field advantage as much, but I think that the fact that Houston doesn't have their home field advantage matters. And I think that it matters more, sleep in your own bed, stuff like that in these leagues. I think that matters more than people give it credit for. We'll talk about who I think is going to win, but I think it's going to be interesting. Paxton Lynch looked better now they had some time. He almost won them the game last week. Little nose of the football wasn't touched. They have a chance to kick a field goal, win the game, maybe. So I think they're in the right direction. This is a tough matchup for them coming off that loss, unfortunately. But it'll be interesting, I think, more than people give it credit for. This is another interesting game. San Antonio at Seattle. This is a late game on Saturday. So be sure to watch this one on ESPN Plus. There's some free publicity for ESPN Plus. Someone sponsor me. My email, and contacts down below if anyone else wants to sponsor me. San Antonio coming off the loss to Houston Roughnecks, as we mentioned. Jack Cohn looked pretty bad in that one. Through a pick, they just didn't look super great to me. I haven't really loved San Antonio all year. I think they play hard. Not they compete. I like Jack Cohn more than I thought. We talked about it, but I don't love them. Seattle had that crazy win last week in Vegas on the road. I think this game will be. I think the home field advantage will matter here for Seattle. In the old XFL, they had a decent amount of fans. It'll be a Saturday night, 7 p.m. Their last game was a Thursday night at 6. This is a Saturday night at 7. I can't imagine the crowd won't be better. I think we saw some things click for that offense. Ben DiNucci, if he can limit the turnovers, he'll be the MVP of the league. That's real. I think it was XFL News Hub, if apologies, but they had an article and they said the same thing basically, that if DiNucci can cut down those 2 or 3 turnovers to 0 or 1, ideally 0 more of the games than that, he could be the MVP. So I think we started to see that. I think doing a good job spraying the ball around. Their defense looked good last week. I think that San Antonio doesn't really have the playmakers to exploit them as much as a team like St. Louis or DC does, or a defense. So I think Seattle, this would be a good win for Seattle, I think. But 2 teams that are 1 and 2, that if you go 1 and 3, you're struggling most likely to win this one. Not to win this one, excuse me, to win the division. So I think being 2 and 2 versus 1 and 3, both these teams have a lot to play for. In particular, San Antonio, but Seattle to an extent, they're gonna have to keep up with Seattle, St. Louis, and DC. Third game, we got Arlington versus St. Louis. Kyle Sloter looked okay last week. This game in St. Louis, I think this is their first home game, which is crazy. They were like selling out tickets actually, which is crazy. Like also wild. Like they had to add seats to the 300 level section. It's a really big football city. They had one of the best crowds in 2020. They play in a dome, which I think is helpful. In terms of like crowd noise and everything like that. Kyle Sloter played in the USFL with limited fans at the hub. I think that's going to matter. We'll talk about it. I think St. Louis lost last week, but they played so far the best team or second best team in the XFL, depending on how you look at it. But yeah, I think this one will be less close than people think. I'll talk about it a little later, but I think this one is gonna be as close as people think. But it'll be a good game. I like Kyle Slaughter a lot. I'm glad he's finally starting. Adrian Karen had looked okay last week, threw a couple picks, but um, yeah, that's a good. This would be a big win for them as well. We got Vegas and at DC. Vegas coming off, as we mentioned, that really close loss to Seattle at home in the final minutes in the game. DC coming off that good win against St. Louis until the end. They had two suspensions. I should pull that up. Their suspensions. Where is it? Yeah, Francis Bernard, who's their starting linebacker, and Gabe Wright, who's a backup nose tackle. Both got Francis Bernard with the 2-game suspension, and Gabe Wright got a 1-game suspension. I don't know how much that affects them. They still kept most of their depth on defense. Luckily, they kind of you guys find and everything, but they still got to keep their guys. I think this game is we'll talk about it, but I think DC's clearly the better team. Vegas, unfortunately, has kind of ran into they've had some tough games. They played DC twice now in their first 4 games. They lost Seattle in the heartbreaker, and then they lost in that comeback. That's right, to Arlington in week 1, where they had the lead in the first half too. Unfortunately, so pretty tough schedule. I think 2 games against a team that's been undefeated. 1 game that you lost in 2 games they lost in nail biters really, and 1 game that they just the first game of the season blew it. Brett Hundley looked pretty solid, kind of solid to me last week. He makes throws that I'm like, okay, you were an NFL quarterback. And other times I'm just like, what are you doing? But I think he's an upgrade from Perez. I wonder if this game were in Vegas, I would be more scared for DC. I think being at home on a Sunday night, again, they get a decent crowd with the beer snake and everything. I think I'm a little bit, we'll talk about it with the lines. I think DC is going to win. So these are the lines. I'm getting these on Thursday morning. Trying to record Thursday morning because I can't make this my full-time job yet. Again, you want to sponsor me, that email is down below. Houston by 9 is just a big line. I know Orlando, maybe I'm just reading too much into last week, but Arlington's not a bad team, and Orlando played them pretty well. I think that was in Arlington too. Now I gotta check that. Sorry, folks. Yeah, that's in Arlington on the road to lose by 1 point in a really close game. So I don't know. That seems like a big line. I think if that line gets any bigger, especially, that's an easy bet for Orlando for me. I think that I don't trust Brandon Silvers. I'll say it. I don't know. I don't trust him. I really don't trust him. I know he's got good stats. I think he's just playing with a good team, which is some of it. But I feel like he throws a lot of jump balls. His interceptions are bad. Like he's always playing ahead. I think if you can like just not let them play with a huge lead right away and like get a few points and just make it close and make him like beat you, I think you can win this game or at the very least keep it close. So I'm not sure. I'm not going to pick against Houston to win, but that's a big line, especially if that gets any bigger at Caesars. If it's over 9, I would like over -9. I would say take that for Orlando. Seattle, San Antonio. Again at home in like prime time, kind of or not prime time, but Sunday night, 7 p.m. I think that'll get a decent crowd. I think they're the better team. I think their offense is better. They put up a lot of points too, which is another big factor. So I don't think Seattle's going to win or lose many games like 13-10. I think they're going to put up at least 2 or 3 touchdowns, more like 3 or 4, more likely, more often than not, just because of their offense and their talent. So I think that's a decent bet for Seattle. It's a good line though. Over under 40.5. I'm probably taking that over. But that's a good line too. Houston, Orlando. I think that's another. These are the over unders for points are really good. Arlington, St. Louis. I would take that over. I think St. Louis is going to wipe the floor with them. I think being at home is going to be a huge boost for them. As a brutal loss, especially the way the game ended, I feel like they have a sour taste in their mouth. I think they're going to come out firing. I think this game is going to be way less close than everyone thinks. Even 4 seems low. I would take that easily. Vegas, DC, again, it's a big-ish line. Since it's in DC, it's easier. I wonder how the suspension stuff really plays into them. Vegas, is a really desperate team. DC has a little bit of wiggle room, especially having beaten St. Louis. I wonder how they look. I think that's a pretty decent bet. We'll go into predictions. This video is already going on too long. This should be a 4. I will edit that later. Um, maybe I'll edit right now, actually. Nope, not here. Whoops. All right. Different tab. So, we got Houston. Wait, what? All right. Take 2. Um, Houston minus line. I'm picking Houston win. I'm picking Orlando to cover, especially if that line gets any bigger. That seems too big. That's a risky bet. I wouldn't make that my best bet at all. But I wouldn't be shocked. I think Houston's just they're definitely gonna win and it might even be comfortable, but just 9 points is a lot to give a team on the road. I don't know. I know Orlando's been bad. Maybe I'm just overreacting to one pretty good game, but like you could tell me lose by 8 points. Like that's not even like a close loss. Like I don't know. I feel like that's and like I don't know. I feel like it's on Brent Silver's a little unsustainable. Their defense is good. I think if they can just give Paxton Lynch any time at all, which is easier said than done, and just hold on to the football, they'll be fine. Which they kind of held onto the ball last week pretty well. I feel like. Seattle we talked about. Feel pretty confident in that one. I think just their high scoring offense. The lines are going to be bigger and their variance. It's probably going to come down to a 3-point conversion because for some reason they always go for 3 points, which I like overall, but like, dude, just go for 2 sometimes. I don't get it. But whatever. Arlington versus St. Louis. This is my best bet. I think St. Louis is going to blow them out. I really do. I don't think Kyle Sloter is ready for this. A guy who I like. I think at home, their first home game in 3 years in St. Louis. That's a football town. In that dome, I think it's going to be crazy. St. Louis all the way. Vegas, DC for both. Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable. I think it could be closer than that, but I'm betting. I still think that's pretty good. The Orlando bet's just kind of a fun one. I'm confident. I've had a pretty good record this year, so if I get one wrong, I'm kind of okay with it. But I think bigger than 9. That's just a big line. I don't know. So thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let me know down below what you guys think of those lines. Any predictions for the week and the games, everything like that. And thanks for watching.